Hello, everyone. Welcome to our podcast. My name is Kenneth Charles A. Martin, and this is the first episode of our podcast, Kwento ng Mga Guro. Now, I am very excited because today we have so many guests and aspiring educators from Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies. They are from the Group 3. I am also thrilled in this new episode because I am expecting a very entertaining and very educational discussion with our guest speakers. Allow me to present to you our resource speakers in this newest episode of our podcast, Kwento ng Mga Guro. Without any more delay, let's get started. Our first speaker is from Bautista, Pangasinan. He will introduce to us our topic for today. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Roy Vincent Maniflor. Hello, Mr. Roy Vincent Maniflor.
Hello, Kenneth. Thank you for the introduction. Naririnig ba ako ng maayos?
Yes po.
Okay, salamat. So, magandang hapon sa ating lahat, sa host natin, Kenneth Charles. Magandang hapon sa lahat ng tagapakinig at magandang hapon din sa lahat ng kapwa ko speaker sa araw na ito. Okay, so ang pangalan ko po ay Roy Vincent D. Maniflor. Ako ay kasalukuyang kumukuha ng kursong Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Social Studies. And sa hapon na ito, ang aking task ay introduce sa inyo ang topic na i-discuss ng mga kapwa ko resource speaker mamaya. Okay, so next slide please. Okay, so ito ang introduction ng ating topic para sa hapon na ito. Ang topic natin ay tungkol sa the teaching learning resources, ICT, and the curriculum. So this is about the integration of ICT resources sa curriculum na ginagamit sa teaching learning process, ginagamit ng mga teachers. And of course, nakikita ng mga students. Okay, so ICT has been a great help for teachers and students when it comes to education. Okay, so itong statement na to, sobrang evident nito ever since nung face-to-face pa kasi nakikita natin yung integration ng ICT resources pagdating sa teaching learning process, yung paggamit ng laptop, pag-present ng PowerPoints, pagpapanood ng video. So yung mga yon, those are some of the examples ng ICT integration when it comes to education. So its usefulness have been highly highlighted with our current situation. So ito, sobrang evident din kasi, di ba, since yung situation nga natin is pandemic, hindi pwedeng face-to-face interaction, hindi pwedeng physical. So ICT made it possible na even without physical interaction, makakapag-conduct pa rin tayo ng classes. So magpasalamat tayo sa ICT integration kasi even though hindi tayo nagkikita-kita personally, hindi pa rin stop yung learning. Since eto nga, nagka-conduct tayo ng online conferences, online classes, and such. The use of ICT materials and its integration to our curriculum made it possible to conduct classes even without the face-to-face classroom environment. So ICT helps teachers to interact with students. It helps them in preparation for their teaching and provide feedback. So kung dati yung technique ng mga teachers manually magre-record sila ng class record, magre-record ng attendance, ng scores. Pero due to the help of ICT integration, pagdating sa curriculum natin, mas napadali yung trabaho ng mga teachers kasi hindi na nila kailangan manually na mag-compute. Kasi kapag nag-enter sila ng grade sa Excel, sa computer, hindi na nila yun kailangan i-compute na i-add manually kasi automatically na yung mga scores nila is na based on the percentages na ipo-compute nila. So yun, nakikita naman natin sobrang evident ng help ng ICT pagdating sa curriculum. ICT enables the use of innovative educational resources and the renewal of learning methods, establishing a more active collaboration of students and the simultaneous acquisition of technological knowledge. With the help of ICT, it is much easier for us to create team projects, cooperate, and learn from each other. Okay, so yung impact din ng ICT integration pagdating sa mga estudyante. Kasi even though magkakalayo ng bahay, pwede pa rin tayo mag-usap-usap para sa pagkandak ng or pagpa-plan when it comes to group projects, ganun, assignments. Okay, so as we go along our podcast this afternoon, mas lalo nating makikita yung kung ano ba, yung mas malalim, kumbaga mas malalim na integration ng ICT pagdating sa mga curriculum natin. Yung dun sa when it comes to the curricula, when it comes to the lesson planning ng mga teachers, ano ba yung mga resources na ginagamit, ano ba yung mga resources na tamang gamitin para sa mga estudyante. So ayun, i-discuss yun ng mga kapwa ko resource speakers para sa podcast natin na ito. So ayun lang, ibinabalik ko na po ang spotlight sa ating host, Kenneth Charles Martin. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Roy Maniflor, for that meaningful introduction. Now, to help us understand what's inside the observation report, here is Mr. James Brian Prima to share his ideas. Mr. James Brian Prima, you may now take the floor.
Ayun, so, am I clear ba? Clear naman ba?
Yes po, Mr. Prima.
Ayan, so, thank you for introducing me, Mr. Martin. And hello to our viewers and listeners. So, what am I going to talk about you right now is the 7 types of curriculum. So first, we have recommended curriculum. It specifies the skills, concepts, and content that will be highlighted during learning process. It is frequently provided to schools as a policy suggestion, complete with a list of objectives and a material sequence that suggests graduation requirements. So ano ba yung example nito? We have the K-12 science curriculum for grade 10, and you can locate it under the Ministry of Education, Department of Education, or in the Commission on Higher Education. The second curriculum is the written curriculum. It has been approved and sanctioned for use in the classroom. It represents the wants and demands of our society. And also, it translates the recommended curriculum's broad goals into particular learning outcomes. So its examples are the scope, the sequence charts, the lesson plans, and even our syllabus. And you can locate it under DepEd Order number 42, series of 2016, Policy Guidelines on Daily Lesson Preparation for the K-12 Basic Education Program. The third curriculum is the Thought Curriculum. It refers to the curriculum that is provided to pupils by teachers. Teachers have a critical role in a curricular decision-making because they are the primary implements of curriculum. They decide how to accomplish the desired learning goals while taking the students into account. So, we have this example like when the teacher asks his students or to do a laboratory experiment with their guidance. So, meaning it is demonstrated. And you can locate it under UNESCO International Bureau of Education. The fourth curriculum is the supported curriculum. This curriculum is supported by available resources and that is referred to as the supported curriculum. It plays an important role in establishing, executing, and assessing the curriculum, but it also has an impact on the quantity and nature of content that is learned. So ano ba yung mga examples nito? For sure, alam naman natin na lahat tayo meron nito, but hindi lang tayo aware na isa pala sila sa mga examples nito. Like, the resources include both human, the teachers, and as well as the physical. Ano ba yung mga yan? Such as textbooks, audio, workbooks, visual aids, teacher guides, etc. And you can locate it under DepEd Order number 18, series of 2020, Policy Guidelines for the Provision of Learning Resources in the Implementation of the Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. We have the fifth curriculum, which is the assessed curriculum. This curriculum reflected in the learners' assessments or evaluations. It compromises the teachers, the school and the external organization to evaluate such as the formative and summative. So eto na, makikita natin dito yung examples such as the pencil and paper test, the oral examination, and the performance test. And you can locate it in other series of memorandum, but what am I going to present to you is the Schools Division of Misamis Oriental Division Memorandum number 271 series of 2020, interim guidelines for assessment and grading in light of the basic education learning continuity plan. So the sixth learned curriculum is the learned curriculum, and a learner absorbs or makes sense of the curriculum as a result of interactions with the teacher, classmates, or the institution. It encompasses the students' acquired information, attitudes, and skills. This example is like from a non-reader to a reader, or from not knowing to knowing, or from being disobedient to obedient, meaning it was measured by the tools in assessment. And you can locate it under the Ed Memorandum number 173, series of 2019, Every Child a Reader program. Now, the last curriculum, but not the least, is the hidden curriculum. This is usually the unwritten, unofficial, and often unintentional lessons, values, and viewpoints that pupils absorb in school are referred to as the hidden curriculum. So these examples such as peer influence, school environment, media, parental pressures, societal changes, and cultural practices. And it is very evident in the learner's character and personality. So back to you, our host, and thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much for that very informative presentation, Mr. Brian Prima. So again, he presented the different types of curriculum, the examples, where it is located, and its descriptions. Again, for reiteration purposes, we have 7 types of curriculum. These are recommended curriculum, written curriculum, thought curriculum, supported curriculum, assessed curriculum, learned curriculum, and the last one is hidden curriculum. Now, a lot of teachers and pre-service teachers are already familiar with this next topic. But for the sake of our viewers, may I introduce to you Mr. Aldrin J. Kirante. He will share his observation on how the design was implemented or translated into a daily lesson.
Narinig ba ako? Am I loud?
Yes, Mr. Kirante, loud and clear.
Alright, so, okay, next slide po. So now we will be discussing how the daily lesson plan is done in accordance with the elements or components of a curriculum. We have here a table with 2 columns. The first column is it includes the elements or components of a curriculum, and the second column is planning of the daily lesson. We've borrowed a daily lesson plan from Rizal High School, Senior High School, which was used in applied economics. The first element of the curriculum is behavioral objectives or desired learning outcomes. Okay, as you can see, the objectives, the desired learning outcomes, are divided into 2: the content standards and the learner objectives. The content standards, it's focused on the understanding of the learners, while the specific objectives, it is focused on the things that the students will be able to do after the discussion. Okay. The desired learning outcomes guided the teacher on how to deliberately execute the flow of discussion. It plays a major part since the main goal of the lesson is the learner's acquisition of knowledge and information after the discussion. Apparently, most learning objectives are included in the core syllabus, but the teacher is still allowed to modify this for the sake of the learners. It's just that the teacher should make sure that the modifications that he will be doing is still the modifications are still aligned to the written curriculum, which is the syllabus or the course guide. And the second element of a curriculum is the content. We just included the topics only, not the whole content of the daily lesson plan. The topics include the application of supply and demand and the Philippine peso and foreign countries. Okay. The content is simplified and comprehensible to students. The work of the teacher here is he must explain the definition of terms first before diving into the lesson per se. In this manner, it'll be easier for the students to understand the topics to be discussed. Although the content of the lesson is mostly included in the syllabus in, or in the topics that will be given to the teachers before the semester starts, he can still add information to the lesson as long as it is factual and not a made up one. And the third element of a curriculum is the teaching and learning methods or strategies. As for when it comes to teaching methods, the teacher included in his lesson plan the materials that he will be using, such as PowerPoint presentation, video clips, and documentary, and various sets of graphs and charts. The teacher provided a lot of illustrations and examples and connected these examples to the different disciplines. This will make the students learn better, right, and effectively. And as for the learning methods, the adequate provision of learning materials, whether it is online or modular, was present in the daily lesson plan. The teacher should hand out these materials a few days before the exact date of discussion, so the students have plenty of time to study and absorb the information by themselves. And the last element of the curriculum is assessment or evaluation. As you can see, there are two assessments included in the lesson plan. Wait, in the lesson plan. The first assessment, the 10-minute identification test, it is aligned to the content standards, which was discussed earlier in the learning objectives. And the second assessment, which is the 10-minute activity, is aligned to the specific objectives. These assessments were aligned with the learning objectives of the lesson. This will be the basis for the teacher to know how much information the students acquired. Since the assessment does not only focus on the written aspect, the teacher should make sure that the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills of students are assessed as well. That's all po. Thank you.
Okay. So, again, I think that was a very comprehensive presentation, Mr. Aldrin. As you can see on his presentation, okay, he adopted a lesson plan and compare it, okay, or explain it how the teacher will use it in his or her daily lesson. That is very important, especially to us pre-service teachers, because we could learn new things. We could learn the strategies. We could learn how we organize or how we implement these organized lesson plans in our daily lessons. Okay. So the next part is about using ICT and non-ICT resources. Here is Mr. John Edsel to state how teachers utilize these resources in teaching and learning process. Hello, Mr. Edsel. Again, let us welcome our next guest speaker, Mr. Jhon Edsel Milagrosa.
Hello, naririnig po ba ako? Good afternoon po.
Yes, you're audible.
So, good afternoon everyone. So, in my part, using the borrowed and downloaded lesson plan, we try to dissect the parts of it and we identify what resources, including ICT, were utilized to facilitate the teaching and learning process. So, in this, we borrowed a lesson plan from a public school teacher and sinubukan nating i-dissect yung mga parts nito. I-identify kung anong mga ICT resources ang nagamit sa kanyang teaching and learning process. So in the procedure, we have 6 parts. And these are the motivation, the presentation of the lesson, development of the lesson, generalization and closure, application, enrichment, and fixing skills, and the last is the evaluation assessment. In the motivation part, pictures of different people, events, symbols, and places in the Philippines were utilized for the students to identify. So sa motivation part niya, gumamit siya ng non-ICT resources. And these are the pictures of people, events, symbols, and places in the Philippines. Sa pamaraang ito, matutulungan natin yung learners na ma-enhance their cognitive processing that leads to increased energy and concentration on the lesson to be learned. The next is the presentation of the lesson. In the presentation of the lesson, a laptop and projector was used to show a short video clip about the Himagsikan 1896. This will help students to draw a piece of information about the question being asked that will usually lead right into the introductions of the lesson. So sa presentation of the lesson, gumamit ang teachers ng laptop and projector para maipakita yung short video clip ng Himagsikan 1896. And then, sa development of the lesson, graphic organizer was utilized in organizing ideas and information about Philippines during Himagsikan. Yung mga nakalagay na informations and ideas dun sa pagpipilian ng mga students niya ay yung mga events, dates, and places at mga people sa panahong iyon. Ito, makakatulong siya para mas maintindihan ng mga bata yung lesson na tatahakin nila sa araw na yon. So, sa generalization naman, in this part of the lesson, there were no ICT resources utilized because generalization only discussed the main idea and importance of the lesson. And also, this is the part where questions were asked to the students. This question will help students to maintain and develop their critical thinking skills and to apply information instead of just simply recalling facts. So sa pang-limang parts, which is the application, enrichment, and fixing skills, students are divided into 4 groups. They are tasked to make a poster about the Himagsikan in the Philippines, and they have to answer the given question related on their lessons. The materials needed in making a poster are available inside the classroom. This activity will help students to apply and execute the knowledge they gain in their discussion, and students will develop their creative skill as well as their collaborative skills. And the last one in the procedure is the evaluation and assessment. For the assessment part, written test was managed to assess the learning of the students. A written test consists of 10 questions, and the students will have only 20 minutes to finish the test. Assessments are tools that we can use to evaluate our students' learning, and this is very important in the teaching and learning process because it helps the teacher to determine the progress of his students. And I think that's all. Thank you.
Ayan. So, thank you very much, Mr. Jhon Edsel Milagrosa. So, before we proceed to the next part of our podcast, okay, I just wanted to express my my gratitude because I observed that our guest speakers presented their presentation or the topic very well. Um, these actually are very hard to answer in the part of our observation report because you need to identify the different types of curriculum. Aside from that, give examples and descriptions. And um, the next one is they presented, okay, or adopted a lesson plan. And aside from that, um, the Mr. Aldrin, okay, share how we can, adopt this, how we can apply this in our daily lesson plan. And lastly, okay, we have Mr. Edsel who identifies, okay, ICT and non-ICT resources in this daily lesson plan. So again, this is very important and aside from that, it is complex because to answer the next questions or follow-up questions later on, we need to understand or fully grasp, okay, this curriculum, this daily lesson plan, and the ICT and non-ICT resources used in everyday classroom. So, moving on, we will proceed to the questions and answer portion. Our first question is, after you observe or view a recorded online classroom, what did you notice about the flow of activities and the congruence of each activity to objective or intended learning outcome? Elucidate your answer. To answer these questions, we have Mr. Michael J. Montemayor. Mr.
Yes,
Michael
thank you
J.
so much. Yes, am I audible?
Yes po.
So yan, thank you so much, Sir Kenneth Charles Martin. So to all of the listener out there, and also to my fellow future educators, a pleasant afternoon to each and everyone. So to this afternoon, I just want to share to everyone what I have observed and noticed about the flow of activities and the congruence of each activity, the objectives or intended learning outcomes. So my answer for that is, after I observed, I noticed that all activities prepared are aligned with the level of students' competencies and learning abilities. Mr. Reginald Austria prepared activities in a form of question, and all of these are related to their lessons, which is the economics, shortage, and scarcity specifically. And as I read all the questions, I noticed that all of these are aligned with the intended learning outcomes of the lesson. I did observe inactivities that are not related to the objective of the lesson. That would be all. Thank you for listening. Back to you, Sir Martin.
Okay, thank you very much for that very short but sweet answer, Mr. Michael J. Montemayor. For the analysis, we have 3 questions, and also this will be answered by our 3 guest speakers. The first question is, how did you know that there exists such curriculum in the DepEd schools or laboratory schools? To answer this, let me introduce to you Mr. Jhon Kenneth Macasieb. Nakamute ka po, Mr. Jhon Kenneth.
Okay, good afternoon everyone and you host. And my answer for that is the curriculum exists if they implemented well the projects, course outlines, assessments, criteria, educational content, learning resources, and the other factor was presented in such curriculum. So alam naman natin na the it's called curriculum exists because it's to provide teacher guide, book, materials, textbooks for the learners. So the content of the curriculum is valid if it promotes the outcomes that is intended to promote. So we all know that curriculum is all about the lessons and academic content taught in high school or in a specific course or program. High school's curriculum informs teacher what skills must be taught at each grade level to ultimately prepare students. Understanding the broad view helps teachers align the learning objectives of their own curriculum with school's curriculum. And that's all. Back to you, host.
Yes, back to me. Okay. Our second question is, how can education experiences be effectively organized and contribute to the attainment of objectives or intended learning outcomes? The next resource speaker who is assigned to answer this question is none other than Miss Junio.
So hi, good afternoon to everyone. Okay,
Good afternoon.
to answer the question, how can educational experiences be effectively organized and contribute to the attainment of objectives or intended learning outcomes? Here is my answer. Planning is the key to have an effective educational experience, but for it to be effectively organized, we need the following, such as the end goal must be clearly defined. Identify the skills or knowledge that the learner will need to master the goal. Identify the skills or knowledge should be introduced or reinforced. Identify the learner's prior mastery of experiences, knowledge, and ability to tailor the experience to the learner. Therefore, the most effective educational experiences are efficiently organized with the end goal as the focus and the teacher's knowledge of the learners guiding the pedagogical choices. You will know the educational experiences are effective because the goal is reached by the most of the class. That's all. Thank you.
Yes, again, that is our resources speaker, Miss Junio. Okay, actually, I agree. I certainly agree with the answers of our resources speakers in this analysis. And as we can observe, or as we can also see, diba, the process, okay, in a face-to-face classes is also likewise the same in a virtual classes. Ang nagkaiba lang is that we deliver our lesson plans, we deliver the curriculum, we deliver or we practice our teaching strategies virtually. Okay? So, the last question for analysis is, from the lesson plan analyze, evaluate the resources and compare it with the resources in the virtual learning environment. To answer these, we have Mr. Allyson Gregorio. Mr. Allyson Gregorio, you may now take your floor.
So, hello, thank you, Mr. Kenneth Charles Martin. Now, the assigned question for me is, from the lesson plan analyze, evaluate the resources and compare it with the resources in the virtual learning environment. So, my answer to this is that education in this country has grown dramatically since the days of a teacher in a one classroom school. Today, student learning is no longer limited to a physical space as in the past where there was no pandemic. When analyzing the lesson plan, we found out that the combination of ICT and non-ICT resources was used for the class to meet the needs of the curriculum, while the resources in the virtual learning environment were mainly composed of materials based in technology such as video presentations, pictures. PowerPoint consists of educational presentations and other online learning materials. However, technology and the internet have broken through the walls of the school. offering students greater opportunities to personalize their education, access remote resources, get additional help for more challenging assignments, and learn unique new ways. So that would be my answer, and back to you, Mr. Kenneth Charles.
Okay, thank you for that very meaningful answer, Mr. Allyson Gregorio. Okay, so like what I've said, um, um, this pandemic actually did not hinder us to deliver quality instruction. It does not hinder us to, use resources just like um, these creative and new resources composed of ICT. Okay, it did not hinder us to present. Okay, to challenge our students to learn in this pandemic. So to proceed, we have here a reflection questions. Also, it has two questions. Likewise, it will be answered by I think more than three. Okay, three resource speakers. So allow me to read first the question, and then I will present to you our guest speakers who will answer the specific question. So for the question number one, as a pre-service teacher, how did you plan, manage, and implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process to meet curriculum requirement in varied teaching contexts? To answer this question, we have Miss Ann, Mica, and Imperial.
Good afternoon. Naririnig po ba ako? Malinaw po ba?
Yes, you are loud and clear.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. To answer your question, I think as a pre-service teacher, I believe one of the most essential things to consider before designing the inter-teaching learning process is first, it should be aligned to the Department of Education anticipated learning competencies. Pag sinabi nating learning competencies, ano nga ba ito? So ito yung mga expected skills that the student should achieve after the lesson proper. Then second step is the fundamental understanding of the topic. O yung meron din yung conduct formative assessment which will allow me to examine my student. So dito, ginagamit natin yung formative assessment para malaman natin yung strength as well as the weaknesses ng mga estudyante natin. At least yun, magagamit natin kung ano yung mga dapat gawin natin while ginagawa natin or nagdi-discuss tayo or meron na yung mismong topic. And then third, I believe we must constantly consider our student interest in learning style, as this will aid us for designing the approaches and technique that we'll use in the process. One of the most difficult challenges in implementing a lesson plan in this day and age is the low attention of span of our student, and because of the setup we have today. So alam natin na dahil online learning tayo ngayon o yung mga bata, di ba syempre gadgets ang ginagamit nila. So nawawala yung attention nila. So as a teacher, kailangan alam natin kung paano natin gamitin itong mga technology na to. Ano ba yung mga dapat na input na pwede natin gawin. So kasi alam naman natin napaka-diverse ng mga estudyante. May mga learning style ang bawat isa. So ikaw as a teacher, hindi sila ang mag-a-adjust para sa'yo. Ikaw ang mag-a-adjust para sa kanila. Well enough para walang may iwan, lahat matututo after the lesson. Then, as a solution, we might devise several techniques such employing various student-centered approaches. The next stage is to develop an assessment. Assessment play a significant role in the teaching and learning process since this not only evaluates the skills, knowledge, and competency that the student have gained during the process, but it may also provide feedback on the efficiency of the teaching method that we have implemented. So ang assessment, napaka-importante niyan. Pinakalas yun para malalaman natin at the end of the discussion kung gaano ka lawak yung naintindihan ng bata at the same time, makakapagbigay ka ng feedback. Once na nakapagbigay ka ng feedback, alam ng bata kung saan pa siya dapat i-improve niya at ano yung mga bagay na na-improve niya. Sa paraan na ganon, mas malalaman ng bata o mas magiging informed siya sa mga bagay-bagay. So, yun lamang. Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Well said, Miss Mica Imperial. So, um, again, thank you very much, Ma'am Mica Imperial, for that very informative also and a comprehensive discussion about developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process. So, I took a small notes on the things you've said. So, what I like the most about your presentation is that you have mentioned that it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to follow a certain norms or procedures in um, in this um, in this new context. Okay, um, I like that you have pointed out that those learning, okay, or the presentation that we are going to do, the lesson that we are going to present, and the things that we are going to show to our students should be tailored to the needs of our students and to the context that we are now facing. Okay? So, we have actually these questions ay nadoble po. So, but anyway, we will proceed to the next questions to follow our format, to follow our PPT format. So, the second question is, how do you set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes which are aligned with learning competencies? To answer this question, we have Mr. Jhon Darryl Malicdem.
Hello po. Thank you so much, Kenneth Charles Martin, for that introduction. Ayan, good afternoon po ulit sa ating lahat. Again, good afternoon po sa mga aking mga ka-groupmates. Good afternoon po, ma'am. And good afternoon po sa mga nakikinig sa podcast na to. I am Jhon Darryl C. Malicdem and I am tasked to answer the number 2 question of the reflection part of our activity. The question is, how do you set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes which are aligned with learning competency? So this question is really a good question for us as a future educator kasi 'di ba ilang beses na nating napag-aralan kung paano gumawa ng mga learning outcomes, and this question is parang throwback dun sa mga pinaggagawa natin dati, yung mga napag-aralan natin dati, and we need to dig deeper sa question na ito. So again, ulitin ko yung question, how do you set achievable and appropriate learning outcomes which are aligned with learning competencies? So as our group consolidated, ito yung lumabas na mga sagot namin sa tanong na ito. First, we will set learning outcomes that are based on the revised Bloom's taxonomy. Diba, napag-aralan naman na natin kung ano nga ba yung revised Bloom's taxonomy. Hindi na natin ito i-discuss isa-isa, but kasi nga medyo mapapahaba na tong podcast na to pag diniscuss pa natin itong revised Bloom's taxonomy, but I know that you are all familiar with this, and it focuses mainly on the 3 learning domains of a student or learner. Ano nga ba yung tatlong yun? It's cognitive, which is focused on knowledge. Ayan. Affective, which is more focused on the attitude aspect of the student. And the psychomotor, sa skills and body movements ng estudyante. Napag-aralan na natin to dati. And ito yung parang niremind sa atin ng mga instructor natin sa Prof Ed, 'di ba? Na kapag magfo-formulate tayo ng isang learning outcomes, it needs to be anchored sa revised Bloom's taxonomy at dapat matakal niya yung 3 learning domains na to. And I know na ito yung pinaka first step para masagot tong question number 2. Ito yung parang naiisip namin talaga na sagot for this question, yung magfo-formulate ng learning outcome na based sa revised Bloom's taxonomy. So bakit nga ba, 'di ba? We will make sure that the learning outcomes will tackle the 3 learning domains. Gaya nga na nabanggit ko kanina, we share the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor skills. Bakit yun? Bakit natin to pagbabasehan ang revised Bloom's taxonomy? Napag-aralan naman natin, and we are all familiar na students' learning cannot be measured on the knowledge about the topic alone, di ba? Hindi naman natin agad sasabihin na natuto ang bata kapag mataas agad yung exam niya, di ba? Hindi masusukat yung learning ng bata kapag titignan natin yung isang aspect lang. Kuwari knowledge, di ba? Kung nasagot niya ba tama, kung recite siya ng recite, yun na ba yung whole definition na pagkatuto ng isang estudyante as we discussed during our Prof Ed subjects, 'di ba? Hindi, 'di ba? We need to consider also the different domains, particularly yung tatlong domains na binanggit ko, cognitive, affective, and psychomotor. So, this is because students' learning cannot be measured on the knowledge about the topic alone. So, by including these three domains, the overall personality of student will be enhanced. Kapag in-include natin tong tatlong domains na to, 'di ba? Mako-consider din natin yung affective and psychomotor skills, not the mere knowledge alone, 'di ba? For example, 'di ba? Nagpagawa ka ng isang activity sa klase mo, ganyan. And paano mo mga ba matitignan itong tatlong domains na to? Syempre, yung una sa knowledge, titignan mo kung masasagot nila ng tama, 'di ba? And kung factual lahat ng mga sagot nila and based talaga doon sa tinuro mo, doon natin masusukat yung knowledge nila, doon natin ma-observe yung knowledge nila. And sa affective domain naman, doon natin makikita yung attitude or yung reaction ng student pagdating doon sa activity na binigay mo. For example, or sa situation, parang pabigay ka na isang activity, paano nga ba nag-react or paano nga ba nakipag-cooperate yung learner na yun? Sobrang active niya ba? Or napaka-passive niya lang? Siya ba yung nagli-lead? Siya ba yung nag-initiate? It's more on the reaction or the response of the student dun sa binigay mo, 'di ba? And syempre yung attitude nila towards other learners or yung mga kaklase nila. And psychomotor skills, paano natin makikita ito, 'di ba? Makikita natin kung paano sila gumalaw, 'di ba? Kung paano nila i-apply yung knowledge nila, kung paano sila maging creative, 'di ba? Using their body, their movements, ganun. Doon natin makikita 'to. And kung papansinin natin, 'di ba? Kung magbibigay tayo ng mga criteria sa mga students natin, hindi lamang iisang aspects yung titignan, hindi lamang isang aspect yung titignan natin, 'di ba? I-include natin talaga tong tatlong domain na 'to. And ayun, by including these three domains, the overall personality of student will be enhanced. Ayan, we'll specify each learning outcomes in order for our students to clearly understand what to expect about the topic. Na throwback na naman, 'di ba? Kung titignan natin dati, ang tawag dito nung sa mga subject natin sa Prof Ed, kapag pinapagawa tayo ng lesson plan, 'di ba? Minsan ilang beses na may mga gurit this or parang mga XX or mga red marks dun sa lesson plan natin. And particularly sa learning outcomes, ano yung pinakapunan nila? Napaka-broad, napaka-vague ng learning outcome na to. Hindi siya specified. So, as a future educator, ganyan, naturuan naman na tayo how to formulate a specific learning outcomes. Siguro it's time talaga to execute those learnings. Ganyan. And hindi lang manatili dito sa isip natin. And we will specify. Bakit nga ba natin specify? Syempre, pag na-specify natin, yung learners natin, alam nila. 'Di ba? Alam nila kung ano talaga yung gusto mo na, or yung intended na, na result na makikita mo sa kanila. And at the same time, makikita nila and magkakaroon sila ng expectation. Napaka-clear na expectation sa mind nila. And syempre, bilang isang guro, dahil nga lesson plan mo yun, dahil nga napaka-clear at napaka-specific ng nilagay mong learning outcomes doon, hindi ka mahihirapan na mag-formulate na activity, hindi ka mahihirapan na mag-identify ng mga learning resources na gagamitin mo, kasi nga, napaka-specific. And, syempre, ang pinaka-main reason yun is to avoid confusion and overlapping of ideas, tulad nga ng mga reasons na nabanggit ko kanina. We'll also carefully set and follow the time duration for our lesson in order to fully achieve these learning outcomes. Diba, kapag gumagawa tayo ng learning outcomes natin, naglalagay tayo ng duration, diba? Kung 60 minutes, 45 minutes para ma-execute or masagawa yung lesson. Diba, minsan sumusobra tayo, minsan kulang, ganun. Pero, yun nga, kailangan nating tandaan na malaking bagay yung time na yun para ma-manage natin kung paano nga ba natin i-execute yung mga method na nililist natin sa ating lesson plan. And I am sure na kapag nasundan natin yung time na yun, yung time na nilagay natin doon, and napaka-clear at specific ng mga nilagay nating learning outcomes, ma-achieve natin yung mga appropriate learning outcomes na align sa learning competency. And we will develop assessment and evaluation to measure if students really achieve the intended learning outcomes. Ayan, para makita natin talaga kung na-meet talaga nila itong mga learning outcomes na gusto nating makita at the end of the lesson. Syempre, magkakandak tayo ng mga various assessment and evaluation na hindi lamang focus sa isang domain or isang aspect. Pabalik-balik tayo doon, but I just want to clarify the point or give emphasis on that point, diba? Magde-develop tayo ng mga various assessment and evaluation that will tackle not only one aspect of the student's learning, but the whole aspect of the student's learning. And tulad nga nabanggit kanina sa paggawa ng criteria, sa pagbibigay ng scores, ganun. Syempre, we need to consider those factors. So, yun lamang po ang aking i-share dito sa tanong na ito. I hope that you learned something from me. Again, I am Jhon Darryl C. Malicdem. Back to you, Kenneth Charles. Thank you.
Again, that is our resources speaker, Mr. Jhon Darryl Malicdem. Thank you, Mr. Jhon Darryl. Okay, let's move on. For the next question is, actually it is also the same with the first question answered by Ma'am Mica Imperial. But okay, allow me to read the question. As a pre-service teacher, how do you plan, manage, and implement developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process to meet curriculum requirements in varied teaching contexts? To answer these, we have our next guest speaker, the dazzling Miss Jessica Lamzon.
So, thank you, Mr. Martin. I am here to give additional information about what Miss Imperial said earlier, for us to be able to have broader knowledge regarding planning, managing, and implementing developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process. So, am I audible, by the way? So, to start,
yes.
We must know that it is crucial to start the overall learning process of the students with a well-developed plan. For the reason that it will serve as the blueprint of an effective classroom discussion will look like. In order to successfully achieve this, the very first step that we should consider is to assess our students regarding their interests and abilities. We should have at least aware of their strengths and weaknesses. Why? Because our primary goal is to align our plan to the holistic learning of the students. This is an essential part because if our plan doesn't match the needs of our students, it will only be useless. Next is, always keep in mind that preparation is an important aspect to have better and active facilitation of learning. Hence, as a teacher, you should set your goals and objectives so you will be able to manage and implement the plan accordingly. So, one prime example here is about creating a lesson plan. In here, you specified your teaching strategies, techniques, and methods that will help you achieve the objectives necessary for the acquisition of the learning of the students administered in the curriculum. In this sense, careful planning and management ensures that quality teaching and learning is maintained. So therefore, to become an effective teacher, there is a need of consistent effort and patience so that it will lead to successful planning, management, and implementation of developmentally sequenced teaching and learning process. So that would be all. Thank you for listening. We hope that we are able to enlighten you. Thank you.
Here are the documentation of our group for our observation in the class of Mr. Austria, grade 9 Malakas. As you can see here, Mr. Austria is discussing Aralin 2, ang kakapusan. The group 3 members are doing their best to observe and take notes, important information about the topic or the activity given to us. Additional proof and evidences are attached to our activity sheets, such as the lesson plan that we borrowed and other pictures that we used in this activity.
So again, there you have it. Our a very accommodating guest speakers and resource speakers for this podcast, Kwento ng Mga Guro. Again, it is let me express my gratitude and gratitude to all of you because I know despite of having a busy schedules, you were able to attend to our first podcast series. So again, thank you everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you po,
Goodbye.
sir. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.